Okay. Since we're being reminiscent and nostalgic, I will confess to you that my preaching today is the result of having binged on television watching with Netflix for these past several days. There is a series that is trending at the #1 position. It is extremely popular, and it is entitled When They See Us. And I want to spend a moment or two examining that topic and bringing it to your attention in ways that you have perhaps not considered previously. I will also admit to you that not since the production called Roots have I been so impacted by the contents of a series. I could not even watch the series in its entirety at a single sitting. I had to watch an episode, calm down, relax, let some hours and some instances, days pass by before I could return to the series. That's what I want to talk to you about, and I'm not abandoning my assignment to preach in the house today. But I do believe there is a powerful gospel message that is embedded in this review of 5 boys who had their innocence and freedom taken from them prematurely. So if you'll consider the screen, a couple of things that I want to look at today. This sermon is entitled When They See Us. It is based upon the Netflix series. If you go to the next slide, I want to salute Ava DuVernay, who is, yes, the powerful producer and director of this particular film series. I applaud her not only for her narrative of this story, but the way that she has captured the injury and yet open wounds that those individuals, and yes, even we feel in response to what is obviously a miscarriage of justice. I'm also delighted, and I'm sure that you are as well, to see an Ava DuVernay who is female and a person of color prosper and do well in an industry that is dominated by people who do not necessarily look like her. Come on here, somebody. This is a major accomplishment and something that all of us can be proud of. If you consider the next slide, this When They See Us series has to do with these individuals on the left who represent what was then called the Central Park Five. This is what they looked like in 1989. On the right is what they look like today. And Ava DuVernay has both instructed and encouraged us to relabel this grouping of 5 young men and to avoid the temptation of calling them the Central Park Five, but to now refer to them as the exonerated 5. Come on here, somebody. And so I shall seek to honor her wishes in the remainder of my sermon today and refer to them as such, or even on a more individualized and intimate basis. If you consider the next slide, this is the story of 5 innocent boys who were caught up in the whirlwind of a city that had an agenda that had nothing to do with justice. You have heard the saying of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is a much more severe demonstration of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because in many instances, they weren't even in the place. It simply happened to be the wrong time to be a young 14 or 15-year-old black man in mid-Manhattan. Oh, can I talk up in here today? And so, if you give me just a moment or two of your time, I want to look at these 5 individuals. And come on to the next slide. I want to look at these 5 individuals, but I want to be bibliocentric even in my rendition and my reference to them, because I want to argue, beloved, that they were referred to as a group rather than an individual or individuals. And with your permission today, I would like to link and attach what happened to them with a similar scenario that takes place in the Bible itself. I've already mentioned, come on to the next slide, I've already mentioned that this is a severe miscarriage of justice. And let me also remind you that this was never the pursuit of justice. This was never an honest attempt to find out what happened to the unfortunate jogger who was attacked in Central Park. This was the preoccupation of a city determined to assure its population that it was tough on crime. In the mid to late 1980s, there was a sociologist by the name of Jawanza Kunjufu who wrote a series of books, and one of the more popular books written by Jawanza Kunjufu was this book entitled The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. And what I want to argue in your hearing today is that what we see unfold as it relates to the now exonerated 5 is a demonstration and even an illustration of this mindset and mentality and attitude and systemic attempt to destroy a certain segment of our population. Can I talk up in here? Let me remind you that the individuals involved were not late teenagers or young men. They were 14 and 15 years old. Beloved, they were babies. They were babies. Do you remember how naive you were at 14 and 15? Do you remember how pliable, how exploitable you were at such a young and tender age? And those of you who watch the series know that the coercion of those young men had to do with the promise that you could go home tonight. And so whatever they said was not a reflection of the truth. It was a preoccupation of going home by the end of that evening. And let me remind you, the coercion of the system invited the individuals not to confess to a personal crime, but to lie on each other. So I don't say I did it. I say you did it. And then he says he did it. And then he says she did it. And then she says I did it. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? And so it turned out to be the collective testimony of all five who were cross-accusing each other. Oh, I feel this thing up in here today. Come on, let's go to the next slide if you would, because I want to argue that what's tagged as the exonerated five, a group, a collection of young men, is a reminder that the Bible tells a similar story about a group of young men who are placed in an awkward situation and become victims of systemic injustice by the name of the three Hebrew boys. That they get caught up in a scenario where people who were watching them decided to frame them in order to get rid of them. Wait a minute, beloved, do you remember what the supposed crime of the Hebrew boys were? It was that they did not kneel down, did not bow their heads, watch this, and did not close their eyes at the sound of the trumpet and the worship of the king. Wait, I need to say it again. Do you remember what they were accused of? They were accused that when it was time to worship the king, they failed to kneel down, to bow their heads, and to close their eyes. There were princes of the kingdom who reported to the king that these boys did not kneel, did not bow, and did not close their eyes. Well, my question is, if the expectation was that everybody kneel, everybody bow, everybody close their eyes, how did they see what the Hebrew boys weren't doing unless they were violating the same law that they were accusing the Hebrew boy? Oh, come on here, somebody. Can I talk in here? Whew. That they would not have been able to make a report on them if they weren't doing the same thing that they accused them of not doing. Oh, listen, I'm preaching already. Beloved, watch this. So I want to talk about the corollary and the similarity between the exonerated five and the three Hebrew boys. This story of the three Hebrew boys comes from the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel was written by Daniel around the year 530 BC. Of the 66 books of the Bible, it is the 27th of those 66 books of the Bible. The further contents, come on, next slide. Somebody walk with me, stay with me now. It consists of 12 chapters, 357 verses, and a total of 1,606 words. Next slide, please. Let me just recite in your hearing ever so quickly the verses that are relative to what we're discussing and talking about today. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine, watch this, from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Here's what I really want you to see, which is the next verse. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah. And then the Bible identifies who they were. They were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Beloved, I want to argue in your hearing today that there are some striking similarities between the exonerated five and those that we call the three Hebrew boys. The first similarity is that the system preferred to refer to them as a group rather than individuals. Any attempt to dehumanize people starts with making them less than everybody else. And so when you take away their names and refuse to refer to them by their names, but rather by a group tag, it's easier to take advantage of a group than it is individuals who you know on a personal basis. And so the first similarity that I want you to see is that when these boys arrive in Babylon, the first thing they do, meaning Babylon, the first thing Babylon does, they refuse to acknowledge their names. They actually substitute different names for what their names actually were. And beloved, the reason that's important is because there's a difference between what you're called and who you are. I just said something up in here. That there is a great difference between what folk call you and what you really are. And people will seek to mislabel you because that's what they want to say about you when it has nothing to do with who you really are. Can I talk up in here? Okay, so I have become somewhat dedicated to the proposition of getting in 10,000 steps every day. So I'm out getting in my steps. I'm kind of telling you that because in coming days you may see me walking up and down the street. It's not because I ran out of gas. I'm just trying to get my 10,000 steps in. And so yesterday, I decided to get a haircut, and to get my 10,000 steps in, I decided to walk from my house in Massapequa to North Amityville, to the barbershop up on the corner of 110 and Smith Street. Hello, somebody. So I walk up there, get a haircut, and I walk back. Well, at the end of the day, I had 10,010 steps. Come on here, somebody. All right. Yeah. I'm going to last as long as I can. I'm going to last as long as I can. I'm being serious about my health. Woo! Okay. So I walk to the barbershop. And I walk in the barbershop. I see my barber. His chair is empty. I'm out to get in the barber. There are several in the barbershop. Stand up. He gonna testify. Stand up. Yeah, he gonna testify as to the accuracy of this story because he was in the barbershop yesterday. Of course, now he wasn't getting his hair cut, but he was in the he's in the barbershop. And I'm in the barbershop, and I make ready to sit down. And I hear this voice, this high-pitched voice. Andy, is that you? Andy, wait, yeah. I got a little nervous because, I ain't been called Andy. Folk who know me don't even call me Andy. They say Cleo, you know. And so this high-pitched voice, she says, Andy, is that you? And I look, she said, it's me. I said, yes. Yeah. Sidney was there. Sidney was there. He my armor bearer, but he left me. And she said, Andy, it's me. I said, yeah. She said, Shelly Lawrence. You remember me? I said, Am I supposed to? Wait a minute. You know, my brother Sam, y'all remember Deborah Johnson, Sam and Deb, you know, they had a singing group, Sam and Deb, and, you know, and so she says to the guys in the barbershop, she said, this is Andy. And before he was a bishop, he was a nasty rascal. I said, oh, heck to the no. Wait a minute. I said, wait, she said, and I said, gentlemen, y'all have a good day. I went back out to finish my 10,000 steps because I knew if I stayed any longer, there's a difference between what you are called and who you are. And because I know who I am, I wasn't going to let her call me. Can I talk in here? Can I say it like I want to? I don't care what they call you. When you know who you are, they can say what they want to. Ain't it all right? Yeah! Yes! So, I politely exited the barbershop, walked out the door, because I did not, Hollywood, want you to have to hear that your pastor cussed out. Oh, Lord. Because, you know, I wasn't in church. And I wasn't wearing my collar. Hello, somebody. All right. Here's my point. Don't miss my point. My point, sister. My point is, there's a difference between what you're called and who you really are. If you look at the names of these three Hebrew boys, you will notice that each of their names end with the name of God. So by refusing to acknowledge their names, they were refusing and attempting to detach and separate them from the source of their strength. And the reason folk won't acknowledge who you are is because they can't recognize who you are and fail to recognize the God who has kept you and shaped you and molded you into who you. Come on to the next slide. Watch this, beloved. So they renamed them Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. I don't have time to go into the linguistic etymology of even the names that they substituted for them. But here's what I want to say. Those who started out as the Central Park Five were young boys, watch this, 14 and 15 years of age, that the city chose to group them into a single entity and call them the Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five. But just as in the Bible, where the three Hebrew boys seemingly lost their names, in this situation, these five boys, 14 and 15 years of age, seemingly lost their names as well. And beloved, what I want to say is, as a community, as their cousins, as their uncles and aunts and grandparents, as their extended family, let us never forget that they're more than either the Central Park Five or the Exonerated Five. There are five boys who had individual names. And I dare not preach this sermon without honoring the names of who they were individually. Can I talk up in here? So take a look at the screen. They were Raymond Santana. Picture on the left is who they are now. Picture on the right is who they were. Raymond Santana, Kevin Richardson, Antron McCray, Yusef Salam, and Corey Wise. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, they were more than a group. They had individual names. And I'm trying to tell somebody that the people around you who frame you and seek to destroy you and take you out, they refuse to acknowledge your name. They want to keep you in a group because it's easier to oppress you as a group than it is to be prejudicial when it comes to your name. Can I talk in here? Can I feel it in the water? Yes. So give me a moment. Come on to the next slide. Beloved, it was the agenda of the system. The system was not interested in justice for the Central Park jogger. They were interested in safeguarding the image of the city and their posture of being hard on crime. So the first similarity between the three Hebrew boys and the exonerated five is that they had a name. Turn to your neighbor and say, they had a name. Well, watch this second item. The three Hebrew boys were put in a place where they were expected not to survive. When the framers got them caught up in the system and put them away in the fiery furnace, the assumption was their memory will fade and over time they will disappear and we won't have to deal with them anymore. Those who reported them and brought them to the attention of the king, I'm talking about the three Hebrew boys, mistakenly thought that if we put them in the fire, they'll get burned up in the fire and we will be relieved of their presence. Can I talk up in here today? Likewise, in 1989, the belief was if we put them away, if we convict them of a crime that they did not commit, their memory will fade and we won't have to deal with them anymore. They'll be so consumed by the prison system who will catch them up until they won't survive the environment and the circumstances that we put them in. But turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, but God. and the reason that should resonate with you is because the truth is there are some places that people want to put you in that they don't expect you to survive. There's some lies they want to tell on you. There's some hating they want to do on you. There's some undermining of who you are. And they fully expect that if they carry out their plan, you will not survive what they put you in. But turn to your neighbor and say, but God. Ah, glory. Come on to the next slide. What the framers did not anticipate was that God was in control. And even in this situation, 5 young men of color, can I talk up in here? Raymond, Antron, Yusef, Kevin, Corey, put in a situation, put in an environment that they were not supposed to survive. They were not supposed to come out. They were designed to be destroyed in the fire of where they were put. But God. Can I talk up in here? See, here's what those who intended for them to be destroyed didn't understand. You may put your hands on me, but God has his hand over me. Can I talk in here? Can I say it like I wanna? It don't matter the hands you put on me, as long as I'm in the hands of God, he will take care of me. Yeah, yeah, yes. Beloved, some of you can look at your body and see the wounds, see the stripes, see the injuries of where folk put their hands on you. But God had his hand over you. Hello, somebody. And my scars become my testimony. Can I talk up in here? Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, my scars are my testimony. These same scars would have taken anybody else out, but the Lord had his hands over me. Yeah, yeah, yes. God was still on their side. Come on, let's go to the next item before I close here. God was still on their side. There are some things that money can't buy. A few days ago, we learned that Raymond, Antron, Yusef, Kevin, Corey were awarded $41 million. Woo. I don't know how much they actually retained, because, you know, the lawyers had to get some, and then the government had to get some in the form of taxes. And I think that is slightly hypocritical. Hello, somebody. I mean, the same government that put you in the place, now that you're innocent and you get some money, the government that put you there in the first place wants some of the money that you got for being put there in the first. Hello, somebody. Look like you'd have given me the money tax-free. So I don't know. Out of the 41 million, let's see. Let's do some math. 41 million divided by 5, that's 8 million apiece. If the lawyers took half, that's 4 million apiece. If the tax bracket was 33 1/3%, that's about another million. Yeah, so maybe about 2.5 million. I can live off of that. Hello, somebody. But regardless, hear me, beloved, but regardless of the amount, there's some things that money can't buy. That money cannot recover the years of being in solitary. It can't compensate me for the anxiety and the stress and the anxiousness. It cannot repay me from the shame, the assault that I had to endure because people around me believed that I was guilty. Oh, come on here, somebody. There's some things that money can't buy. And even though I may be comfortable and things may be a little convenient, Right now, there's still some things that money can't buy. I'm glad they got what they got. I just wish they were members of my church. I wish they were tithing members of my. But beloved, even in the face of the amount, there's some things that can't be recovered. 13 years of incarceration. There's no amount of money that compensates for the loss of time, because time can't be redeemed. Am I talking right? And so while I applaud the city for finally doing the right thing, it is but a minor comfort for all of the hurt and the pain they had to go through for a period of 13 years. And so let me close on this. Next slide. Now, you know, I really try to be apolitical in my preaching. I really believe that the church ought to be a place of refuge where you can come at least for 90 minutes and be free of Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. So I was going to omit this portion of my sermon. But then when I remembered that in 1989, amidst all of the cries for the destruction of Raymond, Antron, Yusef, Kevin, and Corey, there was one voice that stood out above the rest. It was the voice of Donald Trump, who in 1989 spent hundreds of thousands of dollars where he placed a full-page ad in what was USA Today at the time, where he called for not only the castration, but the death penalty of Raymond, Antron. Can I talk up in here? Yusef, Kevin, and Corey. And it's a awkward twist of fate that the man who called for their castration and death in 1989 is the President of the United States in 2019. Something is wrong with this picture, beloved. And the other day, did you see? The other day, when the president was asked, are you prepared to apologize now that the forensic science proves that they were not guilty, that there is no DNA to support the charge, and the real perpetrator has confessed to the crime? Our president still refuses to acknowledge their innocence, to say, well, they confessed to the crime. Beloved, something wrong with this picture. If it's irrefutable that the boys are innocent, why is it so hard to say I was wrong and I'm sorry? You know, I'm not a member of the strategic team that puts the Democratic campaign together, but I want to imitate Donald Trump today. Democrats, if you're listening to me, I think we ought to take those 5 boys, put them on a bus, and send them around the country to remind every community and every American of how the system took advantage of 5 black boys named Raymond, Antron, Yusef, Kevin, and Corey. And beloved, I'm not being political. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. But in the name and the memory of Emmett Till, next November, every last one of us ought to get off our rusty dusty. Make sure we go and vote in memory of Raymond, Antron, Yusef, Kevin, and Corey. Yes! 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 There should be a national tour. Raymond, Antron, Yusef, Kevin, and Corey ought to show up to every Trump rally and say, we're still here. If it had been left up to you, we'd be dead. But we're still here. Turn to somebody and say, I may be broken, but I'm still here. Yes!